Good morning, fourth grade. This week, we're going to be studying main ideas and details of a story. It's so good to see you this week. I hope everything is going well, that you're staying safe, and that you're wearing your mask. And so let's take a look at the beginning of our lesson. Let me share my screen with you. All right, let's see. Let's get this going here. Okay. All right, so the book we're going to be reading is Treasure Allen. It's based on a novel by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is coming from CKLA Literacy Unit 8. Okay, so in this story, we have a couple of vocabulary words. So remember, at the beginning of our story, we're reading about Treasure Allen. We're going to be studying the main idea of the story and how to find key details in the story. So after this lesson, you should be able to find the main details of a story, the main idea, and point out at least 3 details that you found that were important during that story. Okay, so the first chapter is chapter 1, the old sea dog and the black spot. Our first vocabulary word is squire. Squire is a noun. It's an English gentleman who owns a large estate or piece of land. And if you look at this photo, it kind of reminds you of when we were reading about the medieval times. They kind of dressed the same during that time. Okay, our second vocabulary word is bearings. Bearings is a noun. It's the location or position of something based on information from a compass. So if you were traveling or hiking, you have a compass and it has north, south, east, and west, and it tells you the direction that you're going in. So a lot of times, especially in this story that we're going to be reading, Treasure Allen, pirates, and anyone who sailed on a ship like Columbus, they relied on a compass to make sure that they were going in the right direction in which they were traveling. That's how they kept up what direction they were going in. Next vocabulary word is seafaring. Seafaring is an adjective. It's working, traveling, or living on the sea. So anytime you were a worker on the ship with a captain, or you were traveling on a boat with a captain on a quest, in this case, or just living on the sea on a ship, it is called seafaring. Our next vocabulary word is sabry. Sabry is a noun. It's a heavy sword with a sharp, curved edge. All right, cove. Cove is a noun. That's our next vocabulary word. Cove is a small area along a coast sheltered by hills or mountains. So sometimes you might find a cove around oceans, and it looks like a cave that you can swim into. And then once you're inside, sometimes you're able to walk on land if there's land inside a cove. Sometimes coves just have water where you just keep swimming through a cave. Especially when you're going in a cove, you should be very careful because sometimes the tide can be low where you're able to get in there and the water doesn't cover your head. But when the tide comes in, that cove sometimes will fill up. Okay, so what I want you to think about before our reading, I want you to tell me what a main idea is. What is a main idea? Think about that for about a couple of seconds. Okay, I want you to think about the main idea and what it means to you. Okay, and then also think about details in a story. What are details in a story? Okay, so the main idea of a story is when the story tells the total story. It's like a summarization. If you read Three Little Pigs, the main idea of Three Little Pigs will be the pigs were trying to build a house strong enough to stay away or keep the wolf out. So that's the main idea of the Three Little Pigs. So when you're reading a story and you're thinking about the main idea, you're thinking about the overall idea the author wanted you to get out of the story. What does the story mean, or what was the story trying to tell you? Okay. And if we think about ideas or details, I'm sorry, if you think about details in the story, you think about what specifically did the book point out? Did it tell you specific about a character? What's the character mean? Was the character happy? Were they tall? Were they short? Were they young? Were they old? That's details. If you were talking about a flower, you can say, there's a flower in the field. Or you can say, those are beautiful red flowers in the field. So beautiful red would be details of how the flower actually looked. Okay, so I want you to think about that as we read the story. So this is chapter 1, The Old Sea Dog and the Black Spot. Squire Trelawney, Dr. Lavsey, and the other gentlemen have asked me to record the story of Treasure Island, keeping nothing back but the barrens because there is still treasure there. Therefore, I take up my pen and go back to the time when my family ran the Admiral Benbow Inn, and the old seaman with the savory cut on his cheek came to stay with us. Excuse me. I remember the old seaman plodding in the inn door, dragging an enormous sea chest behind him. He was a tall, nut-brown man with gnarled hands and black broken nails. He rapped on the wooden door and called for a drink. He drank it slowly, savoring the taste as he looked out at the rugged cliff top. "This is a handy cove," he said. "Much company?" "Not much," I said. "Well then," he said, "this is a perfect place for me. I'll stay here for a while. I'm a plain, simple man," he continued. "Bacon and eggs are all I need. You can call me Captain." Then, as if by magic, he threw down 4 gold pieces. "Tell me when I've worked my way through that," he said, looking fierce. During the daytime, in sunshine or driving rain, the old captain hung round the cove, keeping watch with a brass spyglass. In the evenings, he sat beside a roaring fire. When we soon learned to let him be, lost as he was in his own private thoughts. Every day he would ask if any seafaring men had gone by on the road. At first, we thought he wanted company on his own, but we eventually realized he wanted to avoid them. It wasn't long before I understood the reason for this odd behavior. He took me aside one day and promised me a penny on the first of every month if I would keep my eyes peeled for a seafaring man with one leg. "Let me know the moment he appears," he growled. How the man with one leg haunted my dreams. Excuse me. On nights when the wind shook the house and the surf roared in the cove, I would see him in 1,000 forms. Sometimes his leg would be cut off at the knee. Sometimes it would be cut off at the thigh. In my nightmares, the man with one leg chased me, calling out my name and hopping along on his good leg. He was always just a matter of inches behind me. I paid pretty dear for my monthly penny in the shape of those terrible dreams. Often in the evenings, The old captain would sing a wild sea song and force the inn guests to sing the chorus. On these occasions, it seems as if the house was quaking as the words echoed within its walls. The old seaman's stories about bloodthirsty pirates, ferocious storms at sea, and wild deeds on the Spanish Main terrified our guest. He must have lived among some of the most wicked men ever to sail the sea. He stayed for several months and never offered us any further payment. Whenever my father mentioned his bill, the captain raised his voice and stared ominously at him until he retreated. I'm sure the terror in which my father lived greatly hastened his death. One morning, while the captain was out walking and talking in the one morning when the captain was walking and taking in the salty sea air, another seafaring man arrived. I was sewing the breakfast table when the door opened and the man stepped in. He was a pale, rascally looking creature, and I noticed he was missing two fingers. Is this here the table my mate built? For my mate Bill? He asked, pointing to a table that had indeed been set for our secretive guest. It was not a straightforward question, and he uttered those words with more than a hint of sarcasm. I told him the table was for a man who called himself captain. Has he got nasty scar on his cheek? He inquired. Yes, I replied. Well, that will be my mate Bill. Is he here? He continued. He's out taking a stroll, I explained. The stranger announced he would wait for his mate to return. Then he stood inside the door, peering out like a hungry cat waiting for a mouse. After a while, the captain strode in. Bill! Shouted the stranger. The captain spun around. He had the look of a man who has seen a ghost. Black dog, he gasped. All right. So, friends, that's our story about Treasure Island. Now, the portion that I read is only an excerpt of the story. Who remembers what an excerpt is? Okay, so if you guess that an excerpt is only a portion of a bigger story. So this story is a lot longer than what we read, but we only read an excerpt of the big story in order to find out what the main idea is. So, as we mentioned, what is a main idea? Think about that for a couple of minutes. Do you remember what we said at the beginning? The main idea is the sum of the story. What does the author want you to know or learn about the story? It's the main idea. What was it about? What was the story trying to tell you? All right, so here's our official definition. The main idea of a paragraph is the author's message about the topic. It is often expressed directly or it can be implied. Now, underline directly and the word implied. Directly means the story can just straight out tell you, it was a mean, nasty old lady. All right, the story can be about a mean, nasty old lady. The story will directly use those words. If it implies that she was mean and nasty, it might sound something like this. The old lady always frowned and never had anything good to say. Okay, so it might just give you a summative of how the person is and not come out and just tell you who the person was. Like if they were mean and nasty, it might not say just mean and nasty. They might use other supporting language to let you know that she was always mean or she was always frowning and never had anything good to say. So we're going to freeze right here, okay, for our lesson today. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about the main idea of what we read. And if you want, or if you need to, you can go back and listen to the story. You can read along with me and get an idea of what you think the main idea of the story was. And then I also want you to pick out 3 good details of what we read. Okay? I want you to think about that. Get a piece of paper, write your name, write the date at the top, in the middle, excuse me, write main idea, write the main idea of what you think this story is telling us, and then scoot down, skip a line, and put 3 details as a heading. All right, in the middle of the paper, write 3 details, and then come over to the left-hand side and then list 1, 2, and 3, 3 details of the story that we read, the excerpt. I want you to pick out 3 good details, and then we're going to talk about that when we come back the next time. So for now, stay safe. I miss you. Keep learning, and we'll get through this together. So bye for now.